So what was the amp did you want me to take something home now?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, you have it outside?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll check that out too. Hello, bros and hoes. Brad the Guitarist here. Some of you may remember recently I went over to a friend's studio, Steve Wilson, who is the former amp technician for Stevie Ray Vaughan, and also got to meet Greg Martin and play his 1958 Les Paul. Greg brought along on one of these visits a Mesa amplifier that we're going to take a look at in this video. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, stick around.
Well, the last guy that went through it was Todd Sharp. He just went through it real quick because I knew that at the time you really didn't. Well, we were busy.
I told Greg, I said, I will work on a boogie for you, but I don't enjoy it and I don't want to.
I just didn't want to push it.
Yeah.
I turned a lot of guys down, but the guy...
Make Brad do it. That was your suggestion.
Well,
see those headphone stands in there with the cup
I saw
holder?
you worked on 2 or 3 of them. I thought, well, maybe he would just see if he could get rid of this noise.
I'll see what I could do, but no promises.
Did you see those iron headphone stands with the cup holder and the RTR logo?
I did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had those custom made, and the guy that made them for me, the reason he made them, he said, I'll make those for you if you work on my boogie. So I worked on those.
Okay.
The only thing one fella did, he changed, it's now pull thick. I'm not sure what he did to that. It used to say something else, but it might be okay.
Oh, lead shift.
Yeah, I think lead shift was okay.
Okay.
But I don't think it had thick on there. Because, I mean, you look at it. Hey, in the back, it's got the schematics, the original schematics and everything.
Okay.
So they did another knob on there.
There's the noise. You got the high end boosted all the way up.
That'll do it.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
6.8K.
I'm talking about this is, listen, man, I've had noisy amps in my life.
These are very high-endy.
Yeah, there's something. It may not be fixable, you know.
Oh, I'm sure it's fixable.
I mean, did you want mods? I mean,
No,
or
not
do you,
really.
Okay.
Not really. I just want
The noise gone.
I just want the noise.
Noise gone,
I want to
okay.
see if there's a ground or something. It just don't seem right to me.
Okay.
This thing right here is something they did at Boogie. I don't know what.
Brad, it could be if there's a cap with the outside full turned the wrong way, it could be that.
Might be, okay.
Could be almost anything. It could be a ground loop.
Yeah.
They may have an extra ground connected somewhere.
Could be the Pablo Cruz mod.
But you didn't check tubes like or anything.
Not really.
Off the bat,
Not
or
really.
okay.
I've had 2 people check it. I think there could be a 12AX and a 12AT slot.
That might do it.
That would definitely do it.
You actually had.
X and a
I
T
saw
slot.
one of your boogies were like that.
Okay.
The one you were working on.
Right.
So. Just
That would 100% add a lot of help.
Absolutely.
A hell of a lot of noise.
X's are
what Steve would do here, he would like.
Greg's complaint on this amp is it keeps playing the wrong note. Can you fix that, Brad?
Steve
know.
would fix it where.
I don't know about
When you
that.
turn it up, it really just goes
quieter.
about 30.
I think I'd make a few $1,000,000 if I could figure that dilemma.
Resistor in there where it just goes.
Yeah.
This amp just won't give me no more.
Okay, so first things first with this, I want to get an idea of what it's doing. I was told that it's being loud, it's just noisy, so we'll get a sense of what's going on with this thing. We'll dial it up on the Variac here. All right, about halfway up, we're at about 12 watts of overall consumption. I do not see a power light yet. Got some sound. This is going to sound terrible on this microphone. This microphone is set up to pick up my voice, not to necessarily pick up an amplifier. So, this thing got reverb? Okay, so there we are with 120 volts dialed all the way up. It doesn't seem much noisier than other Mesas that I've had, but listen to this. Okay, here's my volume all the way up on this channel. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this or not, but I've got this all the way up on volume 1, but when I turn it down somewhat, it does get noisier right there from about 9 to 7 on the dial. Interesting. So it makes me wonder if maybe there's a bad coupling cap right there. Just getting maybe slightly leaky. Well, I mean, let's try to turn it up just a little bit and we'll see. It's way up right there. And honestly, I don't see where that's excessively noisy at all. I'm thinking it might be something where he is, something to do with his practice space, perhaps, where he had this thing plugged in. I don't know. Could have been maybe a bad cable. It got some, did have some noise right there on that input jack. So that might be when it got some noise right there, it might be a clue. See there? I'm thinking this might be a case of cleaning some tube sockets, checking to see if there is a AX7 in place of like an AT in this thing, or an AU, putting the correct tube in there, making sure that our tubes aren't microphonic, cleaning the input jacks, cleaning some sockets, stuff like that. But I mean, other than that, quite honestly, I mean, this thing seems like it's operating as it should. Okay, so here's the level of noise at just idle with the lead channel, the drive channel engaged. There we are at about 2 on the lead. There we are at about 10 with nothing plugged in, obviously. The EQ's out. Here's where the EQ in. Out. And I do definitely hear that. But listen to this. Okay, so I'm going to bump the volume back up. Still on the drive channel. Drive channel's all the way up, but listen to this. So that's disengaging the lead channel. We still have that underlying low-end hum. And look, it gets worse. I'm all the way up on this volume, and it gets worse from about 9 to 7 on this volume knob. Listen to this as I turn it down. You hear there how it got a little worse before it got better? I mean, there's not much there at all. So it's not it's not like it's in the power section. It's like it's in the preamp. Wiggling the tubes is probably not going to help. We're going to have to pull this chassis anyway, but I just want to see if we can make it change at all. This is calling for 12 AX7s across the board. 12 AX7, AX, 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 and over here's an AX on D5 for the phase inverter. So all these are supposed to be AX7s in this amp. The reverb probably is adding some noise, I would imagine. Wait a minute. What we got going on here? Post effects level. Must be like a master volume. I'm not sure. We're going to have to figure out how this is wired. I'm going to see if there's any modifications to this. Yeah, we're going to have to open it up regardless. Let's go ahead and pull the chassis, and because we're going to have to clean stuff anyway. We'll pull the chassis, see if there's any mods to this. Okay, so just generally speaking, you can sort of see how things are laid out here. We've got the big power board is back here. Here are our output tubes. In this case, a pair of 6L6s. They did make this model with the optional 4 6L6s. Here's our phase inverter tube right down over here. This front board is pretty cramped. the way that everything is laid out in one of these is not easy to get to, because you're, first of all, you're kind of far down in there. If I had to desolder this relay right here, this is the only relay in the amp, but if I had to desolder this, you know, it's kind of difficult to get down to that with an iron to do anything with it, you know. And solder, you'd have to have a solder sucker and your iron, and to get anything down that far in there, just really difficult, really cramped, and just a lot of components per square inch, really. A lot of wires in the way, like kind of up above everything. You can see sort of how cramped all this is. The way that everything is kind of laid out down here is just weird. You know, Mesa's kind of the only company that did things like this. They don't do it like this anymore, but they did back in the day. And I just don't care for it. It's just kind of hard to get to everything. It's not really much of a joy to work on something like this. But at any rate, here it is. But you can see the way this is constructed. They've got the tube sockets. They're not actually mounted through the board. The terminals are bent up over the board and then soldered onto the pads of the board. So basically the way they would have constructed this is they would have laid this board out on a surface, and they probably had holes that would line everything up for them, like a jig more or less, that the board would fit into. And they had sockets laid out already, like the 4 sockets. They probably had like little holes set for those that would orient them in the right directions, and then you would put the board down on this jig and then just one by one bend these tabs over and just solder all those into place. The problem is, you know, again, if I ever had to replace one of these sockets on a Mesa like this, I mean, imagine what kind of a pain in the ass that would be, to have to desolder all of these tabs, you know, and then take all of these components off of each one of these tabs where it just would be a real pain in the dick. Not fun. You know, here's one that's actually up in the air that isn't bent over and soldered, so you can kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about. You know, so this is a standard tube socket, but just the way that they have these, you know, soldered in here is, I mean, I like, you know, the problem solving of it. It's like they thought up a different way to do it, and you know, there was some inventiveness, I guess, in the way that it was done, but just not fun for the tech who has to come in here and maybe replace one of those. So, you know, that's my beef with it. So anyway, you can see what you're up against with one of these Mesas. Even the older ones that are a lot simpler than some of their newer stuff is still really just densely wired. It's hard to get to anything. It's kind of hard to compare things to a schematic. It's not as familiar as like you know, a Fender or a Marshall would be. And yeah, it's just not very fun. And you've got all these errors in the schematic where you're tracing out switches that don't exist on, you know, or that do exist on in the amp. And then you've got other options like this back here. This control on the back that we looked at. This says, let's see. So on the back, this says it's a post effects level. That one right there. You see that little sticker, post FX level? That appears to be right here in the amplifier, but it doesn't exist on the schematic. So there's no mention of it on this schematic, but that's where it is. So it's right there at the preamp out, power amp in. So you can adjust level for that. That is this jack right here. So if you run a line from here, you can go to a different power amp. So, you know, this is where the dummy load that I just made in a previous video, I'll put a link up here if you want to look at that. You know, if you wanted to put a dummy load on this amp, on the power section, and just use the preamp in this, you could do that. You could put your dummy load on this, and then run your preamp, use this output right here, run that to whatever. You can run it to a power amp, you can run it to a line in on a board or something of that nature, whatever you wanted to do. But you could take the signal off the preamp and run it from there, and then you would have level control with that control on the back right there. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and clean these pots. We'll spray these while we're in here. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this pot over here that is the control for that post effects level, so that level right there appears to be original to the amp. So I think it was done at the factory. That's not something that was added later, I don't believe. Because why do I think that? Well, because the pot codes on all this, everything in here, see that one right there, 13781, so that's 1981. This one right here is a 1985 pot. This one over here is a 1982 pot. There are pots that, you know, kind of run the gamut of a few years there. So I believe this amp is probably about, probably a 1985. It seems to be the latest code that I see. That's a 79 pot right there. That's an 85 pot. They had pots from a few different years, probably, you know, set around in different values. Definitely one important thing you want to clean is this contact right here. This contact on this jack is on the effects loop, and if that contact right there is ever broken or bad, you won't get signal to the output. Okay, so this was given to me by Steve Wilson. That's exactly what this is for right here, is cleaning contacts exactly like that. Get this one up here in the front too. Okay, so that's the input jack. Yeah, handy little tool. That's pretty much our jacks cleaned. All of our pots are cleaned. Tell you what I think I want to do. We might as well bust out our new dummy load that we made and hook it up and get some voltages going in this. And I want to check these coupling capacitors, particularly this one. Well, I want to check the coupling caps in the tone circuit, because I was getting some weird activity on this first volume pot. So I want to check and make sure that the caps leading to that are okay. So I just noticed this sticker on the side. It's kind of hard to make out some of this, but it looks like it says right there, customer. Maybe it's either a B or a G, Thompson. And that looks like 81, but I don't know if maybe that's the order date, or maybe that's 91. That could be 91. Okay, so we've got our dummy load hooked up. We're going to dial this up on the Variac. I've got a signal coming into it, and we'll see if we get anything out of it. Okay, obviously all that control's working. Bass control is working. It would be more pronounced if I put it on a different frequency. Mids work. It's an interesting waveform. Look at that. You can see how deformed that is. EQ in. Out. I mean, everything is operating on this amp the way it should. That much I can see. But the thing is, oh yeah, the presence control operates as well. If I pull lead drive, that's a different channel. Then, okay, so that's switching to a different channel. This is one channel with the lead drive engaged, and this is another channel with it disengaged. Two different channels. And then the lead master works with the lead drive engaged. Okay, so I see what's up now. It's just hard to figure out what the hell's going on when you don't have the foot switch. That's the only thing. Tell you what, that switch right there is not right though. Look at that. Something's going on with that switch. See that? There's nothing there. What? Oh, that's because I had the lead. Because I had the master down. That would be why. Okay, so from where I'm standing, this all looks super acceptable. I don't see any excess noise, at least not on the scope. I really didn't hear very much either when I had the thing plugged in, so I don't know. We could probably try some different tubes. I may even try like a 12AU or 12AT or something like that, maybe in the first stage. Let me see what I've got laying around that I might be able to stick in that first stage and clean this thing up a little bit, maybe even drop the overall gain of it just a little bit so it's not quite so noisy for him, because it sounds to me like he just doesn't like how noisy it is overall, how gainy it is. So maybe we could do something like that. Let's see what we can do. And just real quickly, here's with everything dialed up all the way on the Variac. I didn't have it quite all the way up a second ago, so we'll get to see the waveform. Here's the main regular channel. You can see it goes into square wave nicely. Here's the master for that. I can turn this master all the way up. The other master back here is already all the way up. I could cut it back as well if I wanted to. I could still get all kinds of preamp distortion. See that's what kind of preamp distortion looks like right there. And then you start bringing in the output right there and it squares off. But you see what I mean? See how it kind of jumps around just a little bit on my scope. It just does that. There's not a lot I can do about that. So here's the lead channel. But I mean, you know, like I said, it looks to me like everything is working pretty much as it should. I don't think there's much of an issue here. Let's see how hot our dummy load is. Wonder if I can even touch these. Oh, these are quite cool. Look, put my hand right on them. No problem. No problem at all. They're not even close to being hot. Well, that's working like a charm right there. Those aren't hot at all. So that dummy load has proven its worth already. Maybe I'll check out some different tubes. We'll maybe tube roll something into V1 or V2 perhaps. That'll just tame down the gain just a slight bit so that it's a little less noisy. And maybe that will get him where he wants to be. So